Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever listened to this week's episode of Tree Talk, episode 229. A championship episode, Matt, for the first time in about 8 months. Both Limerick sides are in senior Munster Championship action this weekend. We have the footballers on Saturday evening and we have the hurlers on Sunday afternoon. We'll have 2 special guests this week to look through those games. There's also plenty of underage action going on, so stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression of the game you get out of it, what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas McCarthy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the Red Brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
We're recording on Wednesday morning, Matt, and you can kind of feel anticipation growing with big championship games coming through, and obviously the Munster Hurling is the big one as Limerick look for 4 in a row. But with 2 games, you looking forward to it?
Yeah, Jack. Sure. Look, we're really into the meat now of the inter-county season. And once the senior championship kicks off, and we've got a foretaste of what was to come over the last couple of weeks with the underage championships, minor and under 21, which are building up to a very, very exciting climax. And I know we'll be going into greater detail later in the cast on it, but. Yeah, look, this is I suppose this is the highlight of the year for the next couple of months. From now on till mid-July, we're going to have a 3-month feast of hurling and football. So, really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a feast of GM. And our first guest this morning is Tomas McCarthy with Waterford Sport and Waterford Local Radio. Tomas, how are you keeping?
Morning, Jack. Morning, Matt.
Looking forward to the weekend's games?
I'm not sure. Looking forward is the phrase, Jack, given the form that Limerick have shown over the past couple of years, and even a couple of weeks ago in the league final. But yeah, look, it's going to be a tremendous couple of weeks with the round robins starting like week in, week out. You're going to get quality games, and look, it's going to be it's going to be a heck of a couple of weeks ahead.
Yeah, I suppose when you came on the call there before we went live, Matt was saying we're Waterford waiting in the long grass. Is that kind of the feeling below there in the Taoiseach?
Yeah, I think so, Jack. Like it's been very low key, especially compared to last year when there was a lot of anticipation of Waterford challenging Limerick. Waterford possibly lifting Liam McCarthy. They were going into that Munster Championship as league champions after a tremendous win over Cork, but fell very flat in the summer. Capped off by that heavy defeat against Clare. This time around, Waterford have taken a different approach to the league. They've probably played in fits and starts. Beat the teams they're expected to beat in Antrim and Laois. Drew with Dublin, lost to Kilkenny and Tipperary. Waterford didn't really play their full team in any of the games, so it's been a completely different approach. And like the next couple of weeks will show whether that'll pay off.
You just mentioned they're not playing with a full team. There's obviously been word of a few injuries. Who is out? We'll say definitely for Sunday.
Yeah, I was speaking to David Fitzgerald last week, Jack, and Austin Gleeson is out with a hamstring injury. Picked that up against Tipperary. He hasn't played a full 70 minutes so far this year. So obviously that's a big blow. I think he'll be back for the Cork game, all right. 𝘤𝘰𝘷𝘦𝘬𝘪𝘰𝘯 is also with a hamstring injury. Picked it up against Kilkenny. That's another setback to Waterford because I'd imagine he would have been earmarked to mark Aaron Gillane, especially after the job he did against him in the first half of last year's Munster Championship game. I thought it was a big turning point when Daly went off injured that night and Waterford had to change around their defence. And also Shane McNulty is out, another key defender, another regular over the past 9 or 10 years or so. He's out with a broken bone in his foot. So they are 3 injury blows, and like Waterford's squad wouldn't be as deep as Limerick's is. So they are definitely 3 setbacks for Waterford heading into this game.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's squad is as deep as Limerick's, thank God, at the moment. But I suppose you're missing those lads. Patrick Fitzgerald is obviously involved heavily with the 20s. Will he be saved for Sunday? I
imagine he'll play some part on Sunday, Jack, whether that's starting or coming off the bench. He actually didn't start any of the league games, which I was surprised. I thought he would maybe start one of them. But look, he's a super talent. Maybe he didn't show it all the time for the under-20s, but like he'll be one that Limerick will have to keep an eye on when he comes on. I imagine he'll feature at some stage, whether that's in a starting role or off the bench. Padraig Fitzgerald is another one to look out for. Did quite well at stages during the league. Really lit up the Fitzgibbon Cup as well with SETU Waterford. And Fitzgerald is really the big name around here because Mark Fitzgerald is another one of the under-20s that I think will start, considering Waterford are down so many bodies in defence. I think he might start, whether that be in the full back line or half back line. So they're probably the 3 players to emerge. Conor Ryan as well could feature in defence. He got a good run of games during the league as well. So they're probably 3 or 4 the newer names that have come on the scene during the league.
Yeah, I suppose Limerick isn't the team you want to come into with injuries in your defence. Conor Prunty and Tadhg de Burkish should be all right though, and that'll be a huge boost because in 2020 All-Ireland final when Tadhg went off, it seemed to change it. And you mentioned when 𝘰𝘰𝘦𝘀𝘀 went off last year that if you can keep your starting 6 on the field for the 70, it'll go a long way in trying to stop Limerick. Exactly,
Tadhg has had. He's been through the mill in terms of injuries, as you mentioned there, the 2020 All-Ireland. He suffered another setback last year as well, didn't finish out the championship. But his return to the defence during the league really settled Waterford in the Tipperary game and in the Kilkenny game. And, I expect that Waterford will set up with a sweeper on Sunday. I think they will set up with 7 defenders. I think Tadhg will be sitting almost as kind of a 4th member of the full back line, if you like. And I think that really solidified the defence because Waterford were leaking a couple of soft goals during the early stages of the league, but he's a really steady and influence. And Conor Prunty, another very important member of the defence. His form was a little bit patchy at the start of the league, but he has gone head to head with Aaron Gillane in the past, and I expect that he'll take up that mantle on Sunday. They've had a couple of great battles during over the years, like both league and championship, and Prunty won an All-Star a couple of years ago, probably on the back of his displays against Gillane. So I'd expect those two to come face to face again on Sunday.
Yeah, from what I've seen anyway, Prunty has done the best job on Gillane for the last few years. But that's one key matchup. If you're saying Tadhg is going to sit, who will be given the job, Mark and Cian Lynch?
Oh, that's a big one, Jack, isn't it? I mean, he looks to be like it was never away, really, Cian, especially his performance against Tipperary, when they needed a man to win primary ball, he was there, he just knits to play together. It might be a job maybe for 1.5 hours to come back. The likes of Neil Montgomery, Jack Prendergast, they're real workhorses around that middle third. You'll also have Jack Fagan, Caleb Lyons around there. Now they'll bomb forward as well as carry out their defensive duties. They will really bomb on. I thought Caleb Lyons was probably Waterford's standout player of the league, and he got 11 points from play. I think he could really thrive under David Fitzgerald. We didn't see a lot of ball going into the inside forwards during the league, which was a source of frustration really down here. Especially the role that Dessie Hutchinson played. Waterford shooting a lot from distance. I think we'll see more of that on Sunday. Caleb Lyons kind of thrives in that. So I think it might be down to maybe one of the midfield men, 1.5 hours, maybe the likes of Montgomery or Prendergast or someone like Darragh Lyons maybe to pick up Cian Lynch in around that middle third.
Yeah, and finally for me, before I go to Matt, you kind of mentioned there that Dessie played with a withdrawn role. Could it be a case of Davy not trying to show his hand early on in the league with one eye on Limerick from, I suppose, February time?
I think so, Jack. I think so. I think if there was any member of the Limerick backroom team in the stand for particularly the matches against Tipperary and Kilkenny, I don't think they would have learned a whole lot about Waterford, to be honest about it. I think Desi will be back inside on Sunday, alongside Michael Kiley as well, who missed a large chunk of the league, got sent off against Laois earlier on in the season. I think you'll see Waterford put in a few balls into Desi, into Michael Kiley inside. They'll be like a twin threat inside there. I think Waterford look to mix it up a bit. I think you'll probably see early on Waterford shooting a lot from distance. Davy has referenced the All-Ireland semi-final last year between Limerick and Galway getting off a lot of shots in the first half. I think we said Galway got off 27 shots in the first half of that game. So I think Waterford will shoot on sight maybe at the start, but then maybe put in a few balls into Desi and into Michael Kiley. Davy says he's looking for a mix of, long ball, short ball. I think we'll see that on Sunday. I think he is holding something up his sleeve. I think Waterford supporters are hoping that he has something up his sleeve for Limerick this weekend.
Yeah, sorry, no, just cutting ahead of you again, Matt. But Mikey Kiley, obviously, he's going to be known to the Limerick people for his exploits. UL, he's obviously been the star man in Fitzgibbon for the last 2 years. There's obviously a real hope that he'll transfer that into the senior.
Absolutely, Jack. And we see nowadays, it's usually two men inside the full forward line, and he's a great target man inside. He can fend off, two or three defenders, and he's a real eye for goal as well. Once he gets that ball in hand, he goes straight for goal, and we saw that in the Fitzgibbon final just down the road in Waterford, when he got 4 goals. So yeah, he's Michael Kiley and Desi Hutchinson could really play off each other, and I think we'll see some balls going into around the edge of the square, and that'll be a fair battle between the two Mikes, Mike Kiley and Mike Casey, on the edge of the square this weekend.
Yeah, it promises to be very exciting inside there. Matt, I'll throw it over to you.
Tomas, thanks for coming on with us indeed. How important from a Waterford point of view will be a big performance from Jamie Bannon?
Oh, huge, Matt. He didn't play a full 70 minutes of hurling last year. He missed the entire league. He only came back for the start of the Munster Championship, and then he went off after about maybe 15 minutes against Clare. So we didn't really see the real Jamie Barron. And during the early stages of the league, he really seems to be back to his brilliant best. Working back, driving at defences. He probably has the best sidestep in hurling, I think. Just weaving and bobbing out of traffic. Great player to watch when he's in full flow. Capable of scoring 3 or 4 points in play as well. Probably hasn't had his best games against Limerick. I think, Will O'Donoghue has probably had the upper hand in those duels over the years, and we've even seen Jamie been moved inside to the full forward line at times against Limerick. So I think he'll be out to prove a point as well. He would have been disappointed getting the red card as well against Tipperary, but it's great to see Jamie Barron back to full fitness. And if Waterford are to put it up to Limerick this weekend, he'll have to have a big display.
Yeah, I was just asking Tomas there. He referenced about the Waterford wing backs bombing forward. His strategy with of Tomas and Gearóid Hegarty around.
Yeah, you'd have to get the balance right, Matthew, between attacking and defending. But that's going to be a real conundrum. Who are Waterford get to pick up those two, because the two of them have great records against Waterford. Especially in that 2020 final, they did all the damage, Hegarty and Morrissey. But I do think you'll see, those Waterford defenders really bombing on. I think Waterford had 23 different scorers during the league, including the likes of Conor Prunty, who wouldn't be even noted for his scoring. So I think you will see those Waterford backs driving forward and also shooting a lot from distance, but they will have to, mind the house as well and keep an eye on those very dangerous Limerick forwards. So there's definitely a balancing act to be got there from Davy.
Then to go to the other side of the field, what strategy are Waterford going to have to try and break through what is the best half-back line probably in the country, the Limerick half-back line. Like, you've got the Hurler of the Year there, you've got Dermot Burns, and you've got Kyle Hayes. That's Limerick's likely lineup.
Yeah, I think the last thing that Waterford want to do will be, hitting high ball on top of those three, Matt, like the best half-back line in the country, by a mile. Like, there's absolutely no question about that. I think Waterford will be going short off the puck outs. They've been working a lot on their puck out strategy. Everybody outside their own 45 and working the ball from there. I think we'll see a little bit more of that on Sunday. I can't see Waterford, driving ball on top of those three, and Waterford don't probably have the ball winners either to compete for that type of ball either. Especially since Michael Brick-Welch retired, Waterford don't really have a kind of a noted ball winner around that area, and also the fact that Austin Gleeson is going to be injured as well, so you don't have any obvious target man under those puck outs. So I expect Waterford to go short, and I expect Waterford to, if they get in any type of space, that they'll be shooting from distance, and maybe try and force the Limerick half-back line to come out a little bit and maybe not sit as deep as they normally do, and maybe then pop in a few balls into Dessie Hutchinson and Michael 𝘰𝘰𝘪𝘢𝘵. I expect that's the way Waterford will go about it, because they won't want to be landing puck outs on top of Burns, Hannon and Kyle Hayes.
Yeah, there's no doubt at all, but Dessie Hutchinson and Michael 𝘰𝘰𝘪𝘢 will be a serious twin threat, but they will be coming up against two excellent cornerbacks in Sean Finn and Barry Nash. Barry Nash, who's been outstanding in the league semi-final, and this is a statistic that 12 of the starting Limerick 15 scored. Everybody from Barry up scored, and Barry Nash, of course, got that great goal in the league final. He's going to cause a...
Oh, absolutely, Matt. Like, and this is the thing that I've really noticed about Limerick, and especially in the league final and league semi-final that you mentioned, is that more their backs are getting on the score sheet, and more their backs are driving forward, and you could see that with Barry Nash in the league final. Declan Hannon is getting on the score sheet more often. Like Dermot Burns always chips in with a couple as well, but that's something that Waterford are going to have to be wary of. Like, if they do bring bodies back, they'll have to keep an eye out for the likes of Barry Nash, for the likes of Kyle Hayes, raiding forward. That's something that they're going to have to be really, really wary of. And like you mentioned, Waterford have a lot of scorers. Limerick have a ton of scorers as well. They've threats in all areas of the field, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Waterford to stop.
I'm gonna cut back in there, Matt. Tomas, the fact that you'll be playing the home games again in Thurles, is it as big a deal as it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago that you've had a campaign away from home? You're used to it now.
Well, I think Semple Stadium is probably a home away from home for Waterford, really, Jack. I don't think the players really mind, lining out there. I don't think the supporters mind going there. I don't think it's a huge factor. But obviously it probably levels up the playing field, really. I'm sure Limerick would much prefer to be going to Semple Stadium rather than going to Welsh Park. So I don't think it's a massive factor. And even the management team have said they won't be really using it as an excuse. If Waterford go out of the round robin early as they did last year, I don't think you could really put that forward as a major reason or excuse for that, I don't think.
Yeah, and I suppose starting with Limerick then as well, would you have preferred maybe not facing the All-Ireland champions first out, or does it give you a chance to regroup if it doesn't go your way, and if you put in a good performance, gives you confidence?
Yeah, look, it's not the opening game that you want, really, especially the form that Limerick are in. It's probably the last thing that you want. I think the big thing for Waterford is they need a performance. They need something to cling to, really. I don't think we've seen the real Waterford probably since that game against Limerick this time last year in the Gaelic grounds in the Munster Championship, when they got within a score of Limerick, and the ball was landing around the square deep into injury time, and 𝘤𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 ran out, and there was a massive roar in the Gaelic grounds that night. Since then, Waterford haven't really performed. We're flat against Cork, collapsed completely against Clare. Have only played in patches during the league. So, Waterford need a performance, I think, on Sunday. They'll probably be hoping to bring Limerick down the stretch. I think they're probably looking at the bigger picture, Jack. I think Cork is going to be probably a season-defining game as it was last year. I think Waterford will probably have a lot of their injured players back for that game. They're talking about maybe looking at the Munster Championship in 2 blocks, looking at the Limerick and Cork game as Limerick and Cork games as the first block. If they were to get 2 points out of those 2 games, I think Waterford would be really, really happy. What Waterford don't need on Sunday is a really heavy and damaging defeat, because then confidence would be really low going to play Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in round 2.
Yeah, and I suppose history tell us that Limerick have had a huge adventure over Waterford. There was obviously heavy wins in 18 and 19 in the round robin, and then Munster and All-Ireland finals, All-Ireland semi-final. But the most recent encounter was definitely the most positive for Waterford, and there has to be something from that, even though, Cian Lynch got injured the same day. You mentioned 𝘸𝘪𝘵 went off, and Aaron Gillane, scored all around him afterwards. That you have to take confidence from that most recent encounter.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Dessie Hutchinson had a terrific game that night on Sean Finn, and that doesn't happen very often to Sean Finn. And that's another matchup to really look forward to on Sunday, is the battle between those two. So yeah, there is positives to be taken, but as you mentioned, Limerick have had the upper hand over Waterford ever since John Kiely took over. I think it's 6 championship games, 6 wins, and some of them, pretty emphatic. I think looking at Sunday's game, I think the big difference is, the strength and depth that Limerick have. I think Limerick, panel wise, look even stronger than they did last year, especially with Cian Lynch and Peter Casey now back fit. They've great options to come off the bench, and I think that could be the decisive factor between the 2 teams on Sunday, especially when it comes to the final quarter. I think Limerick just have that strength and depth.
Matt, I'll throw it back over to you there, because I did cut across you there as you dropped.
Yeah, just reflecting on it, Tom, Waterford seem to have a very fraught and frosty relationship with the round robin series. They've played 12 games to date and just 1 win, and that was against Tipperary last year. In the immediate aftermath of winning the league, put your finger on why Waterford haven't adapted to the system like the other 4 counties. Yeah,
that's a great question. It's probably something that everyone is trying to figure out down here, Matt. I think if you look at it, I think it's probably the injuries to key players is probably one of the factors I put it down to. If you look back at the first year that Waterford went into it in 18, they went down to Clare and lost a heap of key players in the very, very first match. If you look back at last year, Waterford also lost a lot of players due to injury. Jamie Byrne, 𝘠𝘱𝘕𝘠𝘱𝑗, Conor Prunty, 𝘸𝘪𝘵, as I mentioned earlier. So going into this campaign, it's so important that Waterford keep their main men fit. And some of them have been pretty injury prone over the years, the likes of Austin Gleeson, Conor Prunty, 𝘠𝘱𝘕𝘠𝘱𝑗, Jamie Byrne. Those 4, Waterford need those 4 players on the pitch, because they don't have ready-made replacements. Limerick lost Cian Lynch last year and were able to replace him and were able to go on and win the All-Ireland. Waterford need to keep those key men on the field. I think that's probably the big reason that Waterford haven't, succeeded in the round robin. They've had those injuries and they haven't had the strength and depth to cope with those losses.
Yeah, I know it might be a ridiculous question, but what will it take from Waterford to get off to a winning start on Sunday?
That's a big one, Matt. I was.
This is a big one for you, Tom.
If I'm to be perfectly honest, Matt, I think it's probably going to take maybe a freak event.
Kyle Hayes, Aaron Gillan, and maybe Seamus Flanagan, and drop a few bombs in on top of them and see how they go. But I would agree with you. I think it will be the 2021 team with maybe, if there was one change, Mike Casey in for Dan Morrissey. But look, it's luxury that John Kiely has these players to choose from.
I dislike trying to second guess John Kiely because you'll always end up with egg in your face. But that's just my thoughts on this particular one.
Yeah, no, we could see, that's an extremely strong team. You could shoehorn in, Colin Coughlin in at wing back or Cathal O'Neill at wing forward, and give them their real breakthrough in championship. I know Cathal O'Neill started a couple of games. That was more due down to Keane being injured. That he could look at it and say, the way during the league he integrates 4 or 5 every game. He might just say, I'll add in 1 or 2 in this game. There is scope for a player to give him a chance on Sunday.
There is, and then that would lead to you having a very, very strong bench. The spin off of it would be a very, very strong bench, because the players that we mentioned, it's frightening to think that 1 or 2 of them might end up on the bench.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Rich English or Graham Mulcahy yet, and they're both all-stars.
No.
That would be starting for a better team. So, and I thought last year Dave Reedy was really pushing for a starting place, and injury has just allowed players to get in front of him. But David is a live contender for midfield and wing forward if he's fit.
Yeah.
But, it's just the luxury that Limerick have at their disposal. But if I was to put it to you, and I do this every week, but this is the one that I suppose really counts because the Munster Championship is starting. Your rank them, your 1 to 5. How you see the Munster Championship table finishing at the end of the round robin?
Limerick, Tip, and Cork.
Limerick, Tip, Cork, and then Waterford, Clare. It's torn.
Clare, Waterford probably. Clare, Waterford. I think the injuries, like Austin Gleeson will be a huge loss to Waterford. 𝘤𝘰𝘷𝘦𝘬𝘁 as well, and Shane McNulty. You're talking about 3 very experienced players there.
Yeah,
but I know Tomas said that they were hopeful that Austin Gleeson would be fit to face Cork the following week. Which would be a major boost. I find it interesting that he spoke about targeting the Cork game, especially Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I think would be a very, very difficult animal.
Yeah, maybe the wide open pitch it would suit them. For me, Limerick number 1. I've a feeling for Cork. That is getting less and less as we get closer, and I do have a feeling for Waterford. But if I was to pick, I would probably have Clare ahead of Tipperary as well. I don't know what damage that Limerick result will have done to Tipperary. If I was to call it right now, I'd say Limerick, Cork, Waterford, but I'd have Clare as my 4th team. Now, one of us will be left with egg in our face, as so often is the case. Both have Limerick, both have Cork, but it can go anyway, Matt. It's not out of the realms of possibility that.
But
I think that one thing that would be surprising.
The fact that we're having this debate and the content of this debate gives you an idea of what the Munster Championship is all about. And as I said at the outset, I suppose its greatest hallmark and trademark is its uncertainty.
Yeah, I suppose the only surprising thing would be is if Limerick don't make it. I think that would be by far and away the most surprising thing. But do you think they'll go unbeaten, or do you think there'll be a blip with the fact that they have 4 games? They can afford a blip.
With 4 games, you can afford a blip.
But they'll use it. We'll say.
Whether they will have a blip or not, you would have to say on current form they won't. But the championship is a totally different animal to the league, Jack.
Yeah.
What has gone on in the league, I can imagine the Limerick camp at this stage have parked that, completely forgotten. This is a new space they're in. This is a new scenario, and I suppose that's one of the great strengths of the Limerick setup. They take it block by block, game by game, and what has happened in the league now is history, and consigned to the history books. What matters now is what happened between the White Lions and Thurles on Sunday.
Yeah, it's hard. The closer we get to the championship, I think it's harder and harder to see past Limerick. Moving on, then out of Munster. So you're saying Limerick, Cork, Tip. I think Limerick, Cork, Waterford. In Leinster, your three. I'm going to say Kilkenny, Galway, and Wexford.
I can't disagree with you. I can't disagree with you. And I think Galway will probably put down a huge marker in that regard. They have an opportunity to do so. They play Wexford in the opening round in Salt Hill, and then they go to Nolan Park 7 days later, where they win those 2 games, which I think they have a real chance. I think it'll be Galway for pole position in Leinster then, but of course the Leinster final will be a different story,
Yeah, both have Limerick to win Munster.
Yeah, I think they probably will. Yeah,
I think so too. And Leinster, Kilkenny 4 in a row, or Galway to upset the odds?
I have a feeling for Galway. Yeah. Jack, I'm of the opinion, irrespective of the result in Salt Hill, that Galway are the nearest to Limerick.
Yeah, they have shown it. Like, they haven't been blown out of the water at any stage. Everyone has had their baiting against Limerick, Bar Galway.
Yeah, and they've come. They have what other teams have. They've come closest in terms of the physicality that other counties have not matched, and I think that will be very important.
Yeah, I still have a sneaky feeling for Kilkenny to win Leinster again. But calling All-Ireland finalists, then I see the big thing for Galway and Kilkenny, that if that is the Leinster final, and if Limerick win the Munster final, that if you win Leinster, you're avoiding Limerick till All-Ireland final day, and I think that's a huge carrot. Now, we're getting way far ahead of ourselves. This is talk for June, but would you expect the 2 provincial champions to get to the final?
It may not necessarily follow.
Yeah.
When Cork get out of Munster, they're a tough cookie to beat now.
Yeah, and you could have if you don't get to your provincial final, you have a chance at the preliminary quarter-final. You'll have a chance. You might have built up some sort of momentum, and I think the main thing is to not be on Limerick's side, if at all possible.
Yeah. I think that there's a possibility, Jack, that you could have a repeat of the 21 final.
21 Cork Kilkenny or Cork Limerick.
Cork and Limerick.
I think it'll be Limerick Kilkenny. But are we saying a first ever 4 in a row for Limerick if we're calling it now on the 19th of April?
On the 19th of April on Forum, it's 4 in a row for Limerick, but there's many a slip between cup and lip. There is the bear pit of the Munster Championship to go through, which could change everything. And the whole narrative surrounding the invincibility of Limerick could be changed come happens 3-4 o'clock next Sunday evening.
It's the beauty of the round robin. It changes like that, If Waterford beat Limerick and whoever wins between Clare and Tip, it could change the entire landscape of the championship. But for right now, on form, there's one team to beat, and thank God for us, that is Limerick. Just the kind of individual awards, and you don't have to restrict it to one name, but we'll say Hurler of the Year. Who are you thinking in that category?
Well, I'm thinking of Dermot Burns and Barry Nash, and
tried and trusted.
And I would not discount a certain Cian Lynch.
Yeah, and very, very, very hard to go against Cian.
And the form he showed in the league final, Aaron Gillane.
Yeah, if I was thinking on my walk this morning, I was thinking about it, and Aaron Gillane was a name that I couldn't couldn't pull away from it. I was looking at the highlights yesterday of the games last year, and for me, Aaron Gillane was Hurler of the Year going into the All-Ireland final. And Hugh Lawler did a really, really good job. And Deirdre Burns had another great game and never let his level slip. But I thought Aaron was phenomenally good in the early rounds and even in the semi-final against Galway. For me, if I was backing a Hurler of the Year, it would be Aaron Gillane right now. But as we said, there's a lot of hurling to be done. For young Hurler of the Year,
but can I put a little caveat?
You can, of course.
We seem to forget our number one.
Yeah, I know. It's just so rare a goal he gets it. I mean, like
that's the point I'm making.
We had our
that's
MVPs
the point I'm making.
Year. We had our MVPs last week, and 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘪𝘠𝘬 was unanimous pick by both of us, and there's no question there. So could be the first man to win Hurler of the Year from goals, I'd imagine.
You stuck me on that now, Jack.
Yeah, I think so. Young Hurler of the Year.
But you see, there's a propensity to disregard the goalkeeper, you know.
Well,
but as I said on last week's cast, 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘪𝘠𝘬 has brought the goalkeeping to a new level.
Yeah, I suppose there's more respect, recognition, appreciation on goalies these days. So maybe Nicky can continue to buck the trend as he so often does. Young Hurler of the Year, if it still only applies to under-20s, you know, I think Billy Drennan is the obvious candidate. Or maybe someone like Ben Cunningham from Cork. It probably just is very...
I'll stop you. Patrick O'Donovan from Limerick.
Yeah, see, I think the thing with Limerick is the squad is so strong, they don't need to use the likes of Adam English, Pat, Shane O'Brien, that they can, like Cathal O'Neill, you know, if Cathal O'Neill had played for a different county, he'd be starting every week for the last 3 or 4 years. Limerick don't have to do that. So I just think Billy Drennan, you know, Ben Cunningham, maybe even Patrick Crotty, these lads will get a lot of game time, whereas the Limerick lads won't.
Owen Downey is another contender there.
Yeah, you know, I just think those boys will get more game time, if anything. But if I was to call it, I'd say Billy Drennan. I know he wasn't great against Sean Finn, but who is, to be fair.
Well, that's no stain on his, you know.
No, some of the best forwards in the country have come against him and got nothing for us. And then top scorer, which could go anywhere if you.
Oh God, Aaron Gillane.
See, Dermy will take a lot of scores from Aaron now. Is the only thing.
I still. Yeah, I think Aaron Gillane will be the top scorer.
I think Conor Cooney will be top scorer. I just think he takes all the frees for Galway. I think it'll make a big difference. But I do think Aaron Gillane will be Hurler of the Year though. So, look, we'll see how those pan out. Both had Limerick to win Munster. You're saying Galway for Leinster. I'm saying Kilkenny. Limerick for the All-Ireland. Aaron Gillane right up there for Hurler of the Year, but caveat for Cian Lynch, Deirdre Burns, and Barry Nash. And young Hurler of the Year. And 𝘠𝘰𝘠𝘠𝘠. But we'll see how those pan out, Matt. We'll keep an eye on them. But as we said, this Sunday could put a dampener on all those things, or they could get off to the right foot. But huge game, huge weekend ahead of us, and one we're certainly looking forward to. Just staying on hurling briefly, Matt. You were in Thurles last night for the Limerick Minors. What a game, first and foremost. What a brilliant exhibition of hurling from two sides. I know Tipperary are out and they've lost all their games, and Limerick have won all their games, but you know, it was a brilliant occasion, brilliant players on both sides. Like Robbie Ryan was obviously the standout for Tipperary. Robert O'Farrell was brilliant for Limerick, but Limerick had a lot of good players all over the park. 3 from 3, really good signs from Evan Loftus's team.
Yeah, you know, it was a fascinating game in many ways. Like, at the end of the first quarter, you thought, you know, that Limerick were going to run away with this. They were winning 8 points to 2. And by half time, Tipperary had turned it right around thanks to Robbie Ryan. I think he must. They outscored in the second quarter. They outscored Limerick 10 points to 2. I think he must have got about 8 of them at that stage. He got 3 in a row at one stage, and he got a couple of doubles. Like the guy, the Holy Crossman, was on fire. But overall, it was a very, very good performance by Limerick. Like Tip really threw everything at him. Just to give a background to it. Tipperary were Munster and All-Ireland champions, and it was their last chance to stay afloat in this year's competition. And they really threw the kitchen sink at Limerick, but Limerick found a response. They introduced Patrick Carney after half-time, and he made a big difference. He had a couple of points on the board within 5 minutes of coming on. And Limerick went 4 points clear again, and then Tipperary came back. They got a goal. Goal that I thought was going over the bar, but it nestled in the top corner of the net, and it dragged them right back into it. And it was nip and tuck after that. Hugely exciting, and very, very exciting finale to it. And Jack Cosgrove then came up with that winning point at the finish. It was a brave effort to go for it. And he got it, and he got it from distance. But time was probably up, and the draw would have been suffice for Limerick to qualify. But that was really the icing on the cake. Kieran O'Regan blew the whistle immediately after that. So look, Evan Loftus can be very, very happy. And I suppose the most pleasing aspect of it, Jack, is it was another stern test for his team. They got a stern test from Waterford in the first round, but that was mainly due to the adverse conditions, which they found a response to. Then they met Clare in the second round, another really stern test. And then they moved out of the comfort zone of the Gaelic grounds to Thurles last night and got a very, very good result. Just a small bit wondering, Jack, from what I saw of Tipperary last night, just wondering why they're out of the championship with the type of performance. Now, speaking to people there and people from Tipperary in the aftermath of the game last night, the consensus was that it was by far and away Tip's best performance of the year. But alas, for the Munster and All-Ireland champions, it came too late. They came very, very, very close to derailing Limerick's unbeaten run last night, Jack.
The thing there is, you wonder how Tipperary didn't make it out, but like the senior, that's the Munster Championship for you. Any team can beat anyone on their given day, and if you've an off day, you'll be beaten. But well done to Evan Loftus and his side.
Yeah.
Whether Robert O'Farrell was going for a goal or not, he'll tell you he was, and look, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Brilliant finish.
Well,
brilliant game.
That's the second great goal Robert O'Farrell has got in this championship.
Yeah, he scored a lovely one against Clare as well. So
got a great goal against Clare. He has an eye for goal. Yeah, he got 3 points as well. So look, Limerick are through. The permutations are that it's a straight shootout next Tuesday night between Cork and Limerick for the Munster final place. Clare can get into the Munster final directly.
Yeah, but they're safe in third. We'll say they're safe in the semi-final.
They're safe in the semi-final. A draw will send Limerick into the final. A win for Cork will send them into the final on scoring difference.
Yeah. So down to the last day, but Limerick can rest easy that they'll have a semi-final at the least contend with in the Munster Minor Championship. So they're well done to Evan Loftus and his side. The minor footballers got their campaign off to start last Thursday, since we were last beaten 111-7 by Tipperary in McNeville Park. Really slow start by Limerick. They went down 6 points to nothing. Came back a small bit without their captain and main man, Aidan O'Shea, their only survivor from last year, which is difficult to deal with. But they have a make or break game now this Thursday against Clare in Milltown Malbay. Clare were impressive 3-12-8 winners over Waterford. It's going to be difficult for John Ryan and his team.
Oh, it's going to be a difficult task. Now, Limerick were in a similar situation last year. They lost to Tipperary in the first round, and subsequently went on to beat Clare and beat Waterford. But on the evidence of what I saw last Thursday night, I'm not very optimistic that lightning will strike twice. Although there are a lot of similarities. Last year, Clare had a big win over Waterford, even a bigger win than they had this year. But you know, Milltown Malbay is a cauldron. It's a very, very difficult place to go at the best of times and win. So yeah, I think I'll be surprised if Limerick come out of it with a win. Obviously, I hope with all my being they do, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Aidan O'Shea is a huge loss, but I would have to mention Evan Curry. The lad from the the stand-in captain. I thought he was absolutely outstanding, and it certainly wasn't his fault that we lost last Thursday night. Like he took on the captaincy, led from the front, got 4 of our 7 points. I thought it was a very, very good display by him, a very, very good young footballer. And
yeah, a huge positive.
We were left to wonder. You know, had he been partnered by Aidan O'Shea on the evening, you know, would we possibly have a different result? Maybe not, but we certainly would have a closer game.
Yeah, look, the hope is this Thursday they can repeat what they did last year, take the final round, and I think 2 wins should guarantee their place, owing Tipperary to beating Clare or Waterford. But the best luck to John Ryan and his team on Thursday in that second game, Milltown Malbay.
Were Limerick and Waterford to lose on Thursday night, it would manifest, I suppose, the greatest weakness of this type of system, of the round robin system, whereby you would have Clare and Tipperary meeting in the final round, and then again meeting in the final, and you'd have Limerick and Waterford meeting in an absolute dead rubber. And you have a similar situation in the minor hurling, because Tipperary are due to play Waterford next Tuesday night in the Minor Hurling Championship, and both sides are out. You wonder about the value of playing these games in these situations, but I know the championships have to be finished out, but like it leads to meaningless games. I don't know what the answer to it is, Jack, but I'm just saying it's one of the inherent weaknesses of and the inherent flaws in that type of system. Yeah,
look, I think the overall system works, but there are going to be issues, but I think there'll be issues anyway you go. Now, there could be a way to rectify that. But look, hopefully Limerick won't have to worry about that. Hopefully there'll be a win. Hopefully there'll be a win on Thursday night in Milltown Malbay, and they'll be confident then going down or welcoming Waterford. The following week was also a disappointing week for the Limerick under-20 footballers. They were beaten comprehensively by Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Monday night, 2-13-6. That finished. Limerick didn't get a score from play. Just physically weren't at the races with Cork. They were a bit off form as well, but I think physicality was one thing that really stood out below in Cork.
Yeah, they matched them for periods in the middle third. Overall, Jack, look, it was a hugely disappointing night for Limerick football, I thought anyway. But I give them a bit of slack in so far as that 17 of the squad that Shane Kelly took down to Cork last Monday night, and I was at it, are eligible again next year, you know, which, like, as I put it to him afterwards, you know, is 2023 more a means to an end? Because you must recall that 2 years ago, Limerick reached the Munster final and almost pipped Cork. They were only beaten in the last 10 minutes. So like that, there would be hopes that those would have stepped up to the under 20 level next year, and it was a good idea to give them a good run in the under 20. But if you look at the under 20 overall, Jack, in contrast to what it used to be, now it's still a straight knockout. Which hasn't changed, and which there's a lot of discourse going on at the moment as to why it should be the odd championship out without a second chance and without this sort of thing. But previously, like the inception of the development leagues, has made it much more worthwhile. And Limerick played 6 games at under 20 level this year, Jack. And they won 3 of them.
Yeah.
And
they won the games they were expected to win as well.
Yes. Yes, like we beat Tipperary, we beat Offaly, and we beat Waterford. Yeah, so it was very, very hard to judge how good Cork were last Monday night. Because as you said in your opening remarks there in connection with this game, that it was coupled with Cork being a strong team and Limerick being off colour. No question about that. They lost him at Richter during the second half to injury, and also Jack McCarthy. But there's no sugarcoating it, Jack. It was a disappointing performance by Limerick. But like when you dig down into it, there is hope there.
Yeah,
and you would certainly say that Shane Kelly and his management team are going in the right direction. And it was a leap of faith, Jack, to put as many as 17 players that are eligible again next year in this year.
And you mentioned those boys are the lads that got Limerick to Munster final. So next year is their year, and please God, they can drive on. But in terms of football, the big one this weekend is the senior championship game against Clare this Saturday evening in the Gaelic grounds. I was talking to Pa earlier, and this is what he had to say. Now, joined by Pa Ranahan ahead of this Saturday's Munster Senior Football Championship semi-final between Limerick and Clare in the Gaelic grounds. I suppose first and foremost, Pa, some people are a bit surprised that it is Clare in the Gaelic grounds, but I don't think you're of that opinion.
No, we were chatting off air there, and even I was last week when I was asking lads what they think was going to be the result between Clare and Cork, and adamant people were Cork, and I just had a real fancy. I know it's easy afterwards to say, oh yeah, it's easy to say that, but I had a real fancy for Clare. I just haven't seen what they've produced over the league. Like, they're so unlucky against the likes of Dublin. Like, they had that match won, and against Kildare they had that match won 2 or 3 times. And just the standard that they usually produce, and given as well that Cork really hadn't that much to play for in this. Obviously Cork wanted to get to the final, but they were already almost guaranteed Sam Maguire. And I remember reading Gary Brennan's article last week in the Examiner about how not competing in the Sam Maguire would have been such a blow for Clare. And it just felt, reading between the lines and knowing the standard of player they have, that they'd be really coming out of the traps to beat Cork. They'd have no real fear from either. I know they got hammered by them in the league maybe 3 or 4 weeks previously, but they learned an awful lot from that game. And I just had a sneaky suspicion, and I suppose they did ride their luck early on in that game. I think Cork hit the crossbar for a goal, and that would have changed things. But from half-time onwards in that game, it sounded like they completely dominated. So wasn't that surprised that they beat Cork, because, look, that's the standard Clare have been producing for a good few years now.
And I suppose Limerick will still be heavy underdogs, but probably would prefer Clare at home than Cork away.
Yeah, look, mentally, it's probably a little easier if you're asking player-wise. Like, having gone to Cork, Limerick would have travelled to Cork and got an absolute hammering in the league. Like, I think conceded 6 or 7 goals. And just, I suppose, traditionally, that famous word tradition, that Limerick teams, no, they'd always fancy their chances against Cork, but they'd have no hang-ups either about playing the likes of Clare, so as much as Clare have been fantastic since Colin Collins took over 10 years ago, like they've been so consistent, there just isn't the same hang up. And I suppose having them in the Gaelic grounds as well, even though it's not a fair trip for Clare either, but just getting to play at home is a big thing in Championship. Not that you'll have a fantastic atmosphere at Renton, but just the familiarity with the pitch and the lads used to playing there and having played there during the league. It's all these things add up to giving you a bit extra of a chance, we'll say.
Yeah, they played, I suppose, in the quarterfinal last year, coming in very different circumstances this year. How hard is it to get over the league when you have been relegated the way Limerick are relegated?
Yeah, I've been relegated both ways. One time when you knew going into the last match you were already relegated, and another time when you just found out after the final whistle that you've gone down, even though you've won your game. So while at the time it's tough to take, we'll say if you bring it to the last day and you lose out, it is tough to take, but you probably do take more away from that in the long run. There are very few high points for Limerick during the league, a lot of low points. I suppose the Meath game would be the highest of the high points. That was on the Gaelic grounds. Limerick the same day they looked like Limerick last year, we'll say. They just had that go about them, that energy about them, put up 17 points, which is a massive score really in comparison to what they were scoring the rest of the league. Against Kildare, they had chances. They probably didn't produce the same performance as the Meath game, but they certainly had goal chances that day. Is it hard? Look, I've always found if the league doesn't go well for you, this is just from my experience, that usually you have a kick in you when it comes to Championship. You just do, because you don't feel like you've achieved anything. You feel like you've a few wrongs to right. And I would hope that would be the same in the camp with Limerick. They're a month out from after playing Clare and Ennis. It'll be a month between the end of the league and the match Saturday. So it's a good amount of time to circle the wagons, and I would hope for a good showing on Saturday.
Are you expecting that they'll have regrouped enough to be competitive at the least, I suppose?
Yeah, I would, because look, there's the league. Everything has been a bit of a mess so far this year, with a lot of things in the background and just different things. And even on the playing field, Jack, you're going into the year without Josh for the whole year, who was a focal point in the full forward line last year. You're missing Dara Tracy, who's looks to have finished up possibly with Limerick. Who knows? A vital cog in the middle, but you still have a good spine there in the backs. Like, you still have Donald goals, Brian Fanning, Sean O'Dea, Ian Corbett. By all accounts, according to Mark Fitz, is going to be back and healthy, which is massive for Limerick. So having a strong base like that, it does give you a bit of confidence going in. The thing will be, can they get enough scores up the other end? It's been a problem during the league. Like, you're missing, even going into the match now on Saturday, you're missing probably Adrian Enright through suspension as well, who played that championship match there against Clare last year and had a fantastic year last year. So it's up to other people to pick up the pieces. Like, Carl Downs has been a good addition to the group this year. Barry Coleman, I think it's his second year been involved, has shown his ability as well. Like, but you'll need other people to step up, but it certainly gives confidence when you have the likes of Ian, Killian Fahy, Brian Fanning, Sean O'Dea still knocking around in the Limerick half of the field.
So far this year, we've seen like Keane Sheehan kind of moving around, Paul Maher in the forwards, Killian Ryan the forwards that we've known in the backs. Would you rather see him kind of revert back to what we saw last year, or?
Yeah, look, I suppose Keane got his All-Star nomination, we'll say, playing at wing back. So I wasn't really sure why. Look, it's always worth trying different things, but I wasn't really sure why he was moved away from that position. It looked like by the end of the league he was kind of moving back towards that position again, because I do think if Limerick are to, I know we're looking at getting some scores, but if it turns into a shootout on Saturday, and the weather doesn't look hectic, so it mightn't, but if it does turn into a shootout, unless Limerick are getting a lot of goals, like that Clare forward line with M. McMahon, Keelik Sexton is back now from injury. Like, they have scores from all over the place. So I don't think it would suit Limerick getting into a shootout. So for that to happen, they have to be strong defensively. So having the likes of Keane back there, Ian, as I mentioned, Killian, we know Brian and Sean and Donald controlling things back there. So then it needs to be real solid. It needs to be solid, because during the league, I suppose there was too many soft scores being given up. And if they're to have a chance on Saturday, that part of the game has to be really solid and structured. And I think it will be, and I hopeful it will be, given the clientele that that are on the pitch.
Yeah, you mentioned Clare's forward line there. You think Limerick will probably need to score goals kind of regardless of how it goes?
Yeah, I do. Like, the Clare forwards, like they are putting up big scores, and they are scoring a lot from play. Like, they completely dominated Cork from play. Like, if you took away Stephen Sherlock's frees that day, it would have been a very comfortable victory for Clare. And they tend to kick a lot of wides from play too. Like, so their scoring opportunities, they're kind of like the Limerick Hurlers almost attitude. They'll take the shot when it's on, and they don't mind. I suppose they prefer to be getting scores than wides, but they're getting 20 plus, 25 plus shots off nearly per game from play, which is an awful lot. So yeah, they have the forwards. So that's where I know I've said this before, but possession is such a big thing. The Gaelic grounds plays a very big pitch. So if you can actually have the ball in the Gaelic grounds, you have total control because there's so many areas you can play in. So that'll be interesting on kickouts. Look, we know the dog in the street knows the way Limerick set up on kickouts as regards what they want to do. It was interesting the last day that Cork actually pushed up on Clare kickouts, got a lot of joy off it until Darren O'Neill came onto the pitch in the second half. And he's just a massive man out there. So it'll be very interesting to see what Limerick do with the Clare kickouts. Do they push up, or do they just let them win it and see can they hold them out and turn them over around midfield? Again, it'll be interesting to see what Limerick have learned from the league game against Clare. Clare learned an awful lot from that Cork game in the league and set up with matchups and set up with their kick out off the back of that. I'm sure Mark Fitz and Mike Downey and Owen Joy and John Chalk and the lads will hopefully have learned a lot from that league game a month ago as well.
And what's a good outcome for Limerick this weekend? Like, can you lose and leave the Gaelic grounds with confidence, or is this a must-win game?
Look, it's not a must-win. Look, it's a must-win if you're talking about Sam Maguire. Like, that's the reality of it. If you want to compete, and that's Sam Maguire, and that's where every player wants to be, then you have to win the game. That's be all and end all. And Clare will be the same. That's why they were so up for the Cork game. What you're looking for really is, like anything, if you're involved as a coach or as a porter, you want a good performance, a good showing, like last year. Like, we all know it's in them because they were so consistent doing it last year. It's not just something they did once or twice last year. They were consistently performing well last year. So if you have that and you can come away, like a loss is a loss, but there's different ways to lose. Like, if they lose damage limitation, then that's not really where this Limerick team are at the moment. Like, they're better than that. Like, damage limitation isn't what you're talking about. Of course they have a chance of winning. Of course they do, because they beat Clare 12 months ago. Clare are in a better place now. They have Keaton Sexton, they have Stephen Ryan back in goals, and Limerick have lost players. So it's turned a small bit that way. And even form-wise, Limerick's form isn't as good. But they still have it in them. It's one match. It's kind of one of those things. They have a free swing at it. It's knockout Munster Championship. And for the two teams, it's actually knockout Sam Maguire, because whoever wins is going into the Sam Maguire, and whoever loses drops to the Tailteann. So you'd hope there's a small bit of casualness to Clare having gotten over the big hurdle, and now they've got Limerick to get over, who they'll fancy to beat, definitely. But you just hope there's a sting in the tail, and that there's a bit of bite in Limerick off the back of the league, because I do think with the characters that are there, it's in them. But it's on the day. Like, can they get it out of them on Saturday?
That was Pa Ranahan, former Limerick footballer. Matt, your take on the game this Saturday. Obviously, on the basis, it's two teams that were relegated, but Clare hammered Limerick in the final round, and they also beat Cork 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, they're going to be heavy favourites coming into this.
Oh, they're going to be firm favourites, Jack. Heavy favourites, and it's going to take a very special performance for Limerick, to come out of it. But look, these special performances have been coming from Limerick. Like we saw in 2019 when Limerick went to Thurles as absolutely no hopers and turned Tipperary over in the first round. And, they didn't carry much hope when they made the short trip to Ennis last year and had Clare knocked out. And we saw what Clare did subsequently. They knocked out Mayo and Roscommon before eventually going out to Derry in the quarter final. So look, obviously Limerick's first Limerick's first thing will be getting their mindset adjusted, I think, Jack. And this will have happened 2 weeks ago. From the expectation of having to go to Cork to play Cork, to now welcoming Clare to the TUS Gaelic grounds. So that's a whole change of dynamic. It's just not, you have a home advantage as distinct from travelling away, but you have Clare, no disrespect to them, instead of Cork. Like who gave Limerick a trouncing in the league, and you'd be saying to yourself this week, had Cork come through, are we going down for part 2? But I think it is the fact that Clare have come through, it has changed the whole dynamic of it. It'll change the whole dynamic of the approach, Jack. And, there'll be a bit of spring in Limerick steps now. And, of course, they will need very little motivation, first of all, when they see the Clare jersey. And secondly, when they'll be mindful of how the final game of the league panned out. Plus the fact that Ian Corbett didn't play in that game, and he's going to be back, and we know the influence that he brings to the team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, on paper, Jack, but football matches are not won on paper. They're won on grass. On paper, it has to be Clare. But I'm not so sure it has to be.
Yeah, I think Clare are a very good team, and they've obviously a lot of young players coming through. We saw Sheridan with 𝘬𝘱𝘦, and they were Division 2 team for 7 years under Colin Collins. But I don't think you can read much into that final round game, without Ian Corbett, the rest of the 2 players, and Mark Fitzgerald. There was still a lot of turmoil with the Ray Dempsey departure and things of that nature. That side have had 4 or 5 weeks now to really regroup. And as you said, they've shown us in the past that they're able to do it. And, I think seeing the yellow jersey is easier for Limerick than the red of Cork. They will be far more confident, I think, in their ability. As you said, they beat them last year. They haven't beat Cork since 2003, I don't think. They beat Clare last year. So that's a big difference. They'll be underdogs, but I think they'll be very happy to come in as underdogs under the radar with little to no expectation, because that's where they seem to operate best. And in many ways, it's a free hit, because they'll want to be in the All-Ireland series. But if they lose, Tailteann Cup isn't the worst, the worst place to be going into this game. So the pressure is kind of off Limerick.
And it is the pressure is off Limerick, and you're absolutely right, Jack. It is in so many ways a free hit. All the guidelines, all the forum lines would suggest that there can be no result other than Clare victory. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And, there is the prize of getting into a Munster final for the 2nd year in a row. There's a prize of getting into the Sam Maguire Cup. It's not as if there's nothing to play for.
Oh yeah, huge prize, and that All-Ireland series then as well gives you chances to, you're going to play probably Kerry. You will play in Kerry in a Munster final, but it could be grouped with other Division 2 teams, and it could give them confidence going into next year. That's the level they want to be at. So they're the teams they want to be playing. But it'll be a tall order for Mark Fitz and the team, but definitely not out of the realms of possibility that Limerick can upset the odds once again and take the win, and look forward to another Munster final. But it'll be difficult. It'll definitely be difficult, but
it will be difficult, and I think that Clare will win, but Clare will earn it to win in the Gaelic grounds.
They will.
But Jack, you made a reference. You made a reference there a few minutes ago to the Tailteann Cup, and I hear a bit of sniggering and sneering at the thought of playing in the Tailteann Cup for any county. It is only the Tailteann Cup. The Tailteann Cup is a response, and a pragmatic response, to address an issue that could not be allowed to continue. And that was the disparity in standards. And we had backed ourselves into a situation where doing nothing about it was not an option. I think that the Tailteann Cup is an absolutely fine competition. Like you know, it is All Ireland B standard. All but in name. Like, but let's face it, Jack. The teams that are in it are B standard. Now we had an abortive attempt a number of years ago to bring in something similar under the guise of the Tommy Murphy Cup. But it petered out in no time because of some of the narrative that's going on about it now. I think the Tailteann Cup is a very, very worthwhile competition.
Definitely.
And as I said, a pragmatic response to a system, that was broken.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great competition as well. I think any team that are in it are happy to go all out. Now, obviously, your main aim will be to win the Sam Maguire, but I think if Limerick or Clare, whoever find themselves in it, will be happy where they are and look towards winning it. Briefly, who will win the All Ireland Championship in football, Senior All Ireland?
Kerry.
I think Dublin will be back. And Tailteann Cup winners. Now I know we don't know exactly who's going to be in it, but who do you think will be in it or will win it? For me, I think the loser this weekend would be my pick to go out and win it.
Yeah, they'll have a say in it. Kildare and Meath, if they end up in it.
Yeah.
I think would be strong contenders. Yeah, they're the type of teams that you're talking about, certainly.
Yeah, I think Limerick will have a right rattle on it if they lose this weekend, and if Clare lose, I think they'll be the best team in it. But that's this Saturday in the Gaelic Crowns, Limerick against Clare in the Munster Football semi-final. Following afternoon, the Hurling Championship kicks off. Limerick versus Waterford at 2 o'clock in 𝘸𝘪𝘵, and then Clare host Tipperary at 4.
We have two more important games at the weekend, Jack.
Yeah.
Our under 20 hurlers travel to 𝘸𝘪𝘵 on Friday night.
Yeah.
In something of a similar situation to the minor hurlers last night, a win should be good enough to see him through to the knockout stages of the championship. Just to contextualize it, Limerick have a win and a draw from 2 games. Tipperary have a draw. They drew with Clare in the first round, and they suffered a defeat to Cork in the second round. Limerick beat Waterford in the first round and drew with Clare in the second round. So that's going to be a very, very interesting game. I think Limerick are going to find it difficult there. If I'm honest, it's Tipperary's first home game. Now, you must remember that the nucleus of this Tipperary team will be the team that faced Limerick in the minor final 3 years ago, which Limerick required extra time to see them off in the Gaelic grounds. Their backs up to the wall, Jack. Their backs up to the wall on Friday night. It's win or bust. Now, it was a similar situation, as I said, to the minor last night. I think it's going to be a tricky situation for Limerick. But yes, Limerick have the wherewithal to win it. I thought, they played. They didn't play to their full potential against Clare, Jack.
Definitely.
And should have won. And should have won the match. Yeah. And if we can see Limerick at their full potential, it'll be very interesting to see the composition of the Limerick team. Will there be changes made? I think there's probably a compelling case maybe for the inclusion of Liam Lynch from the start. That'll be.
I think he might have picked up a knock in the meantime, so I think it'll be fitness depending on Liam. But I think fully fit, he's definitely starting on that team.
Yeah.
It's also interesting as well that if Adam English and Shane O'Brien play Friday, they can't play on Sunday. So if we don't see them on Friday, they'll be involved, and Sunday I think is the key thing there. But I think they'll both play. There's more players there that that haven't seen game time. I saw Billy Mullinogh and Mikey Gavin for their clubs respectively in a league game, and they were both brilliant. So that could put that in Darren Mullins' mind as well. There's a brilliant squad there to choose from, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I'd be back in Limerick. I think when they get their form right and their playing style right, they were under par against Clare, as you said, still should have won. I think they'll be Tipperary, but that's
I'm hoping. I'm more hopeful than confident, Jack. It's not a gimme. It's going to be difficult. I understand the circumstances of Tipperary. That's what I do, And I saw the way they battled for survival last night. It's in the Tipperary DNA, and how they would countenance and how they would live with Limerick dismissing them from 2 championships in 4 days. It's not in the Premier County DNA. But having said that, I think Limerick are capable of winning it, and I just hope they go and win it.
Yeah. And the other game, because it's last. I just saw many games.
The other game is on Saturday at 2 o'clock in Clonmel, or 3 o'clock in Clonmel. I'm not sure. It's 3 o'clock. It's the All Ireland Minor A Camogie Shield semi-final. It's Limerick and Clare. It's a repeat of the fascinating game that they had in Kilmallock last Sunday. I was out at it, and when Limerick trailed by 8 points in the second half and came back to lead by 2, it's part 2 of that great episode. So we'd be hoping. I'd be very hopeful. I've seen that Limerick minor team a couple of times this year, and I'd be very, very hopeful, and that they can get the business done in Clonmel. I think they gave away a few easy goals, I thought, and they were unlucky at the other end. They have this ability to create goals, Jack. They have a very, very exciting forward line. Donna Kenny from Croke Kilfinny, she got 3 goals last Sunday. Laura Southern from Mona Lean, Niamh Brennan from Mahon, Roisin O'Brien. She stepped up and got the equalising point at the end. Clare got a goal towards the finish out of nothing really, and looked as if they had snatched it. But we got a free over on the far side of Kilmallock, at the town side, right out on the sideline. And Roisin O'Brien, she stepped up to it and just planted it straight between the sticks, Jack. It necessitated and manifested, nerves of steel, in my opinion. But she did it, and then of course we have Poppy Giltinan, who's an absolute magician. She's probably the team's answer to Cian Lynch. What she can do is, and but as a unit, as a team, Jack, Lily Duggan was started at full forward, but when Limerick were playing against the Breeze in the first half, they pulled her back as an extra defender, and it's going to be a very, very interesting game. It's there for Limerick to win. I think they can do it, Jack. I think in 2 weeks' time we may be talking about an All Ireland final.
Yeah, that's totally fine. The best luck to the Limerick Camogie side. The best luck to the Limerick under 20 hurlers, to the senior hurlers and the senior footballers. Nearly 90 minutes on the clock, Matt. It was a bumpy episode.
Jack, the best of luck to anybody wearing the green of Limerick.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very exciting week. So much to go through there. I'm hoping there's no more to go through, because I think the viewer fatigue might set in. But a huge thank you to Tomas at the start of the pod you want to come in with something?
I do. I think, Jack, we should pass the vote of sympathy to the Griffin family of Ard Patrick. They have their involvement with Limerick GA has been phenomenal in that they have been providing the transport. Kevin Griffin and his son Derek, and indeed their now late father Jimmy Griffin, who started Griffin Coaches, and Carmel Murphy is well known as representative of Blackrock on the county board, and Jimmy Griffin passed away over the weekend, and we would like to, from Treaty Talk, we'd like to extend our sincere sympathy to the Griffin family.
Yeah, I'd like to echo your sentiment there and pass on our condolences to the Griffin family. I've obviously done a lot for Limerick GA over the years, but it will be a very busy weekend for Limerick GA, as we said. Big thank you to Tomas McCarthy at the start for giving us that Waterford view ahead of the mouth-watering Munster Senior Hurling Championship opener. To Pa Ranahan, as always, for his insight into the Limerick footballers. To 𝘠𝘱𝘵 𝘔𝘪𝘮𝘬 for getting on board and sponsoring the podcast. It's really appreciated. To all the listeners, make sure, if you're watching on Facebook, to like and subscribe. The same with Twitter or with YouTube. Like and subscribe, and it just helps the algorithm, and gets it out to more people in the Limerick area and surrounding areas, because we'll welcome anyone to listen. If you're on Twitter, like and share and retweet and all that good stuff. And same with Spotify. Rate us 5 stars if you enjoyed the podcast. There's plenty more to come. We're only getting started for this year with the championship kicking into full flow. And as always, to you, Matt, for your incredible insight and knowledge. Please God, next week we'll be looking at hopefully a Munster Football final and a good start to the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. Maybe the 20s will be true, and the 𝘠𝘰𝘷𝘦𝘬𝑁𝑒𝑟s Miners will have an All-Ireland final to look forward to. But for myself and yourself, a huge thank you. We'll be in touch soon, and we'll talk next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Especially in the game, we get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from 𝘠𝘰𝘷𝘦 as 𝘕𝘰𝘦 sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas McCarthy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the 𝘠𝘰𝘦, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes 𝘠𝘰𝘷𝘦𝘳𝘢𝘪𝘰𝘯𝘴 leading the charge of the left brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.